What if, right now, I completely turned your understanding of history on its head and told you that absolutely everything you believed about the nomadic tribes of North America is one big, profound misconception? Forget all the stereotypes from old movies. Are you ready to learn the incredible truth about how a single, seemingly paradoxical, yet incredibly strict economic decision forever changed the course of events and transformed scattered, struggling groups into an indomitable and powerful prairie nation? If you're intrigued, don't switch channels or skip this video under any circumstances. For many decades, even the most authoritative historians mistakenly believed that the indigenous peoples of America lived from day to day. It was thought that they survived solely through primitive hunting, simply taking whatever game was available from nature with absolutely no long-term plan. But the reality turned out to be far more astonishing. In fact, the great Lakota tribes took an unprecedented step. Consciously, against their instincts, they categorically refused to pursue small and easily accessible prey. For what? To create an incredibly complex, meticulously planned, centralized system of material provision that even modern economists would envy. While you're processing this fact, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on such historical investigations. So how were they able to build such a system in the harsh conditions of the prairies? And why could ordinary deer have caused the collapse of an entire people? Be sure to watch this episode all the way to the very last second. The big reveal awaits you at the end. You'll learn why hunting small game required a dispersal that was disastrous for the tribe, and how the Lakota's ingenious transition to a centralized economy of large-scale hunting made them the true masters of the Great Plains. Ready? Then let's get started. The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about is that the Lakota operated true mobile production centers. A single large representative of the plains fauna provided the tribe with 50 times more usable product than any forest dweller. This colossal difference in resource volume completely transformed the people's approach to planning their supplies for the long, cold months. People obtained not just nutrients, but durable building materials, raw materials for household tools, and thick hides in a single outing. This formed a reliable foundation for sustaining the life of a vast settlement without the need to expend energy daily on hunting small game. The volume of resources obtained reached incredible proportions, ensuring long-term food security for thousands of people. Successful large-scale resource gathering allowed the entire camp to live comfortably for 3 full months without additional effort. Harvesting such a quantity of provisions required the coordinated work of the entire community, from experienced trackers to masters of raw material processing. Every part of the harvested resource was utilized to the fullest, eliminating any wasteful losses or squandering of valuable materials. The Lakota economy was built on the principle of strictly concentrating efforts to achieve a guaranteed, highly profitable result in the shortest possible time. The process of processing the harvested materials constituted a complex technological chain in which every member of society performed a specific function. Artisans carefully sorted the resources into categories, sending hard elements for frame construction and soft fabrics for tanning. Such deep processing of a single large source completely eliminated the need to scatter efforts in search of dozens of small targets in the forest wilderness. The efficiency of this method can be compared to that of a large enterprise, where raw materials arrive in large batches and are processed without waste. The tribe achieved absolute economic independence, relying exclusively on large-scale shipments of materials from the open plains. Organizing large-scale harvesting required the highest level of coordination among various groups within a single large camp. Process leaders had to precisely calculate the necessary number of workers to quickly process the raw materials before they spoiled. This strict discipline united the collective, transforming individuals into a single, well-coordinated mechanism working for the common good. The responsibility for conserving resources rested with every member of the community, fostering a deep respect for the results of collective labor. This social cohesion became the foundation upon which the political power of the Great Plains Tribal Alliance grew. The use of large sources of raw materials radically changed the approach to creating household items and means of transportation. Thick, durable leather was used to make sturdy containers for transporting goods, capable of withstanding enormous loads during migrations. These containers served for decades, protecting valuable supplies from moisture, dirt, and physical damage during long journeys. Small-scale forest resources could not provide material of such quality and thickness, rendering them completely useless for creating durable containers. The reliability of the equipment directly determined the speed at which the camp could move and its ability to quickly adapt to changes in the environment. Their stockpiles of materials allowed the Lakota to engage in active trade with neighboring peoples, turning surpluses into a valuable commercial resource. They offered high-quality tanned hides and finished goods in exchange for agricultural products from tribes living along major rivers. This trade network spanned vast territories, providing the Lakota with the necessary variety of goods without altering their own way of life. The centralized economy of the Great Plains became the driving force behind intertribal trade, setting new standards for the quality of traded goods. The Lakota's economic influence grew in proportion to the volume of resources they could harvest and process in a single season. Large-scale provisioning completely eliminated the need to constantly move in small groups in search of scarce forest game. Such centralization transformed the tribe into a strong and independent entity with a clearly structured internal production process. The economic model of the Great Plains proved its incredible resilience and ability to provide for tens of thousands of people. I wonder how this topic is perceived in different parts of the world, where you are watching from, and whether you agree with these historical arguments. Please share your thoughts in the comments and be sure to subscribe to our channel to learn new fascinating facts. What was found in the old archives of the first explorers completely debunks the myth of the nomadic people's chaotic movements. Organizing the massive Lakota settlement required extremely complex logistical calculations, comparable to planning the relocation of an entire modern city. The camp could number thousands of people, and each of them needed food, warmth, and reliable shelter from the harsh winds. The choice of a campsite depended on the availability of flat ground, access to clean water, and a sufficient supply of wood to keep the fires burning. The proper arrangement of all dwellings ensured optimal protection from the elements and created convenient routes for transporting heavy loads. Moving such a massive camp was a monumental undertaking, requiring a strict sequence of actions and perfect timing. The assembly and disassembly of hundreds of dwellings followed a pre-rehearsed plan in which each participant knew their specific task. Heavy bundles of materials were loaded onto special sleds whose design was perfectly suited for travel across the tall grass of the plains. The use of small, scattered resources would have made it impossible to create such sturdy and high-capacity vehicles. The speed of the migration depended on the quality of the materials from which all the camp equipment and harnesses were made. The system for distributing harvested materials within the camp was based on the principles of strict fairness and mutual aid. After a major harvest, the raw materials were divided among all families, taking into account the number of their members and their contribution to the common cause. Special attention was paid to providing resources to those who, due to age or other reasons, could not participate independently in heavy labor. This system of social support ensured that no resident of the vast camp would be left without the necessary means of subsistence. Small-scale individual harvesting of forest resources could never have provided such a level of collective security. Maintaining cleanliness and order in such a densely populated camp required strict sanitary and organizational standards. Special zones were designated for processing raw materials so that production waste would not contaminate residential areas and drinking water sources. The use of sturdy leather containers allowed for the efficient collection and removal of material scraps beyond the residential perimeter. Proper waste disposal prevented unsanitary conditions, which was critical for preserving the health of thousands of people living in a limited space. Discipline in maintaining order was just as important as coordination during large-scale harvesting operations. The Lakota camp was a complex social organism where the economy directly dictated the rules of daily behavior. Collaborative work on processing vast quantities of raw materials strengthened social bonds and facilitated the transmission of craft skills to new generations. From an early age, young tribe members learned to work with heavy and durable materials, drawing on the experience of senior craftsmen. This continuous learning process ensured the preservation of unique processing techniques upon which the survival of the entire nation depended. The tribe's culture became inextricably linked to the process of collectively harnessing the vast resources of the Great Plains. Winter encampments required a special approach to logistics, as the camp remained in one place for many harsh months. Wintering sites were chosen in deep river valleys, where high banks and dense trees protected the settlement from the icy, biting winds. Supplies of firewood and provisions had to be calculated with perfect precision to avoid depleting resources before the arrival of spring warmth. It was during this period that the immense value of the strategic reserves built up under the centralized economy of abundance became apparent. No amount of scattered forest resources could have provided enough energy to sustain the camp through the harsh winter. The logistics of the Great Plains are striking in their sophistication and mathematical precision in managing vast numbers of people and cargo. It was a true science of survival, based on a deep understanding of natural cycles and the rational use of every available material. A well-oiled mechanism for movement and supply made the Lakota one of the most mobile and organized peoples on the entire continent. Do you think modern logistics systems could operate with the same efficiency in the complete absence of road infrastructure? Read on to the next chapter, and you'll learn why building a durable dwelling was absolutely impossible without using materials obtained during large-scale foraging expeditions on the plains. The secret that will transform the field of historical understanding lies in the unique architecture of the dwellings of the indigenous peoples of the plains. The construction of a traditional portable dwelling, known as a tipi, required materials of exceptional strength and a substantial amount of space. To cover a single dwelling, it was necessary to sew together 12 to 18 giant, carefully processed panels of thick hide. Forest resources were physically incapable of providing pieces of material of such size and such colossal resistance to wind loads. Lakota architecture depended entirely on the results of large-scale harvesting of raw materials in open spaces. The tipi's design was a masterpiece of engineering, perfectly adapted to the extreme conditions of the Great Plains region. Its conical shape provided incredible aerodynamics, allowing the dwelling to withstand the hurricane-force winds that swept unhindered across the prairies. The heavy, dense roof reliably retained heat inside the dwelling in winter and provided pleasant, dense shade during the scorching summer heat. Thin and fragile materials of forest origin would have torn instantly under the force of the elements, leaving people defenseless against nature. The thickness and weight of the right raw materials played a decisive role in ensuring the structural integrity of these mobile architectural structures. The process of creating the covering for the tipi was one of the most complex and labor-intensive tasks in the camp's production cycle. Preparing the enormous hides required not only physical strength, but also a deep understanding of the complex chemical processes of tanning and smoking. The finished elements were sewn together with strong sinews, which were also obtained exclusively during centralized, large-scale harvesting. The seams had to be completely waterproof to protect the dwelling's inhabitants from prolonged autumn downpours and melting snow. The quality of this architectural element's construction directly determined the comfort and longevity of an entire family's life. For many years, a special ventilation system inside the dwelling functioned solely due to the proper tension of the heavy outer material. Special valves at the top of the cone regulated the smoke outlet from the internal hearth, creating ideal draft in all weather conditions. The density of the raw material allowed for precise adjustment of the ventilation openings using long guide poles on the outside of the tipi. Lightweight fabrics would not have been able to maintain the valve's intended shape under the influence of strong air currents, which would have led to smoke filling the interior. This unique technical solution made living inside the structure safe and comfortable, even with a constantly burning fire. The interior of the dwelling also largely consisted of derivatives of the tribe's large-scale economic model. Thick inner linings, protecting against drafts and moisture, were made from the same durable material as the tipi's outer covering. they formed an additional air layer, functioning on the principle of a modern thermos and retaining precious heat. Using smaller materials to create such insulation would have required an incredible number of seams, which would have significantly reduced the effectiveness of the protection. Lakota architectural thought was inextricably linked to the properties of specific raw materials, which defined the standards of their daily life. Tipi construction was not merely a technical process, but also an important social institution uniting the women of the tribe. Responsibility for the manufacture, installation, and maintenance of the dwellings rested entirely on the shoulders of experienced Lakota women. The collective cutting and sewing of enormous canvases was accompanied by discussions of important issues and the passing down of traditions to the younger generation. Ownership of a high-quality, spacious dwelling was considered a sign of a family's high status and an indicator of its members' incredible diligence. Architecture became a reflection of the social structure of society, where collective labor was valued above individual achievements. It was precisely this strict reliance on a specific type of building material that prevented the Lakota from viewing small game as the foundation of their economy. Without the vast resources of the plains, they would have been physically unable to provide themselves with a sturdy shelter capable of withstanding the elements. The choice in favor of large-scale raw materials was dictated not only by food needs, but also by the region's strict architectural requirements. The ingenious engineering solution in the form of a portable cone could only exist in symbiosis with an abundant, centralized economy. Please like this video if you too are fascinated by the ingenuity and practicality of indigenous peoples' traditional architecture. What the government doesn't want you to know is the incredible level of tool production among nomadic tribes. Large-scale harvesting of raw materials provided the Lakota not only with food and shelter, but also with a colossal amount of solid materials for creating tools. The powerful skeletal framework of large plains game provided craftsmen with hundreds of kilograms of ideal raw material, whose strength rivaled that of certain types of metal. Forest dwellers, with their thin and fragile bones, could never have served as a reliable foundation for the development of serious artisanal production. The choice of economic model directly determined the quality and durability of the tools people used every day. The process of working with hard materials required special skills and a deep understanding of the structure of bone tissue and antlers. Massive shoulder blades were fashioned into comfortable and sturdy hoes, wide scrapers for cleaning hides, and sturdy shovels for earthwork. Ribs were transformed into ideal runners for small winter sleds and flexible bases for complex household structures. Small forest game did not have bones of sufficient size and thickness to create such massive agricultural and household tools. Lakota craftsmanship was based on the use of large-scale components, ensuring the high reliability of finished products. Large antler tips were particularly valuable, as they possessed incredible density and the ability to absorb strong impacts. From these, they carved heavy hammers, wedges for splitting dense wood, and comfortable handles for a wide variety of striking tools. With proper heat treatment, this material became malleable, allowing it to be shaped into any necessary form before it hardened completely. No other element of the forest fauna could provide the craftsman with raw material possessing such outstanding physical and mechanical properties. Access to this unique, malleable, and durable material gave the tribe enormous technological advantages. The use of durable tools radically accelerated all internal production processes in the massive Lakota camp. Powerful bone scrapers allowed women to process thick hides several times faster than would have been possible with smaller tools. High-quality awls made from hard tubular bones easily pierced multi-layered leather, making the sewing process quick and efficient. The durability of the tools eliminated the need for constant replacement, saving the craftsman's precious time for more complex tasks. The centralized economy provided its own means of production, creating a self-contained and completely independent technological cycle. Toolmaking also involved working with tendons, which served as the strongest fastening materials of that era. Long fibers were carefully extracted, dried, and split into the finest threads, possessing incredible tensile strength. When wet, these threads were elastic, but as they dried, they tightly bound the parts being joined, forming a monolithic connection Forest resources yielded fibers that were too short and weak to create long, reliable fastening systems. The technology for assembling complex composite tools was entirely based on the use of these long, strong binding elements. Hard materials were used not only to create crude tools, but also to craft delicate household items. Elegant needles, sturdy combs, cutlery, and components of complex horse harnesses were carved from dense bone with jeweler's precision. The production of such small details required perfect raw material without internal defects, which could only be obtained from large sources. The skill of the bone carvers reached the highest level, transforming ordinary household items into true works of applied art. The aesthetics and functionality of these items reflected the high level of development of the material culture of the nomadic people of the prairies. Glue production was another important branch of the local industry, inextricably linked to the results of large-scale harvesting. Boiling hoof tissue and connective cartilage yielded a thick and incredibly sticky substance used for assembling tools. This glue was resistant to temperature fluctuations and ensured the secure attachment of bone and stone tips to wooden handles. Without access to vast quantities of this specific raw material, the creation of complex composite tools would have been technologically impossible. Mass production of glue became possible only thanks to a centralized model of resource collection and processing. Stocks of hard materials, like food supplies, were carefully stored at camp and transported with every migration. Craftsmen always had high-quality blanks on hand to create new tools to replace those lost or broken along the way. The availability of such a strategic reserve of raw materials made the Lakota independent of chance and ensured the uninterrupted work of all the tribe's craftsmen. Technological self-sufficiency was key to successfully withstanding any external threats and the harsh natural conditions of the Great Plains. How difficult do you think it was to master these unique craft skills without the use of metal tools? In the next chapter, you'll learn exactly how they managed to preserve vast quantities of provisions for many years without the technologies we're accustomed to. The challenge of preserving massive amounts of provisions required the development of entirely unique food processing and preservation technologies. Simply drying meat in the sun only partially solved the problem, as the tough pieces lost their original flavor and nutritional value. The Lakota developed a method of deep processing of raw materials that transformed perishable products into a high-energy concentrate with an unlimited shelf life. This product, known as pemmican, became a true marvel of food engineering among the indigenous peoples of the Americas and the foundation of their survival. Producing such a concentrate was economically viable only when large, one-time shipments of fresh ingredients were available. The process of making pemmican began with thoroughly drying thin strips of meat until they were completely brittle. The dried raw material was ground into a fine powder using stone pestles, which broke down the tough fibers and made the product easily digestible. Hot rendered fat was added to this protein-rich mixture, serving as an ideal natural preservative and binding agent. To improve the seine and enrich the product with vitamins, crushed dried berries, and various edible roots were often mixed into the mixture. The resulting mass was thoroughly mixed until smooth and quickly packed into airtight leather containers. Properly prepared and packaged pemmican could be stored for decades without losing its unique nutritional properties or spoiling. The fat reliably blocked oxygen from reaching the protein mixture, preventing oxidation and the growth of harmful bacteria inside the container. The leather bags in which the product was stored were additionally coated with fat on the outside, creating a completely moisture-proof and reliable barrier. This technology made it possible to create strategic food reserves that saved the camp from starvation during the harshest and most barren years. No forest resources could have provided the necessary amount of fat to initiate such a large-scale preservation process. The caloric content of this product was phenomenal, making it the ideal food for hunters, warriors, and travelers on long journeys. A small handful of pemmican was enough to sustain an adult man's strength throughout a full day of hard physical labor. The compact nature of the concentrate allowed for the transport of vast energy reserves, with minimal space requirements in the tribe's transport sleds. This solved the primary problem of the nomadic lifestyle, eliminating the need for a daily search for food during long winter encampments. The energy density of these reserves directly determined the range of mobility and military power of the entire tribal confederation. Using small game to create such reserves was completely unprofitable due to the lack of sufficient fat. Forest dwellers have lean muscle mass, which is unsuitable for creating a long-lasting, high-calorie food concentrate. Without fat, dried meat remains simply dried meat, prone to absorbing moisture and rapid decay under unsuitable conditions. It was precisely the unique biochemical composition of large plains game that allowed the Lakota to invent this revolutionary method of food preservation. Having reliable stores of this concentrate gave them confidence in the future and allowed them to make long-term development plans. The technology for producing pemmican became the very secret key that opened the way for them to absolute dominance on the Great Plains. This example demonstrates how a single successful innovation in food technology can completely change the fate of an entire nation. The hidden code that changes our entire understanding of nomads lies in their strict rejection of the tactic of spreading their forces too thin. Hunting small forest game, such as deer, was radically different from large-scale hunts on the vast prairies. Deer do not gather in huge herds, but prefer to hide in small groups or alone in dense thickets and forests. To feed a camp of thousands with such resources, the tribe would have been forced to send hundreds of people in different directions every day. This would inevitably lead to the collapse of the centralized social structure and the fragmentation of the great people into small, vulnerable families. The dispersal of people across a vast forested territory posed a serious threat to the tribe's overall security and integrity. When setting out in search of solitary prey, small groups were deprived of the protection of the main camp and became easy targets for enemies. The inability to quickly coordinate the actions of detachments scattered throughout the forest made it impossible to repel a sudden large-scale attack from outside. In the face of fierce competition for territory, such a survival tactic was tantamount to voluntarily relinquishing military dominance in the region. The Lakota's strength lay in their unity, yet the forest economy demanded the constant, destructive fragmentation of that unity. Searching for and tracking down solitary prey in the forest demanded a colossal expenditure of time and physical energy from each hunter. People could wander for days through rugged terrain without ever encountering an animal capable of providing a family with enough food. This constant, exhausting pursuit of scarce resources left no time for tool making, clothing production, or spiritual development. The economy became an endless struggle for day-to-day survival, precluding any possibility of building strategic reserves. Centralized gathering on the plains solved this problem, ensuring maximum results with minimal time investment. This is precisely why the Lakota and other tribes of the Great Plains made a conscious choice in favor of open spaces and abundant resources. They understood that only a centralized economy of abundance could sustain the existence of their vast, highly organized society. The rejection of forest hunting was not a result of an inability to hunt there. It was a rigorous economic calculation by intelligent strategists. They traded the instability and vulnerability of forest life for the power, confidence, and security of the open prairies. Such a choice attests to the highest level of analytical thinking and understanding of macroeconomic processes among indigenous peoples. A shift to small-scale hunting would also have destroyed the complex system of intertribal trade, depriving the Lakota of their main export commodity. Without a surplus of high-quality hides and pemmican, they would not have been able to trade them for essential agricultural products. This would have led to a poorer diet and dependence on meager forest resources during critical times of the year. The loss of economic influence would inevitably have led to a decline in the political weight of the tribal confederacy on the international stage of that time. The Lakota were clearly aware of this threat and categorically avoided any actions leading to economic decline. History shows that tribes that chose the path of forest dispersion never achieved the same power as the peoples of the prairies. Their social structure remained at the level of small family clans, incapable of uniting to tackle large-scale challenges. The Lakota, however, demonstrated how a sound economic foundation allows for the building of a strong, cohesive, and culturally rich society. Do you agree that abandoning small game hunting was the key factor in this people's success? In the next chapter, you will learn why a calorie deficit was the main reason for abandoning the pursuit of solitary forest game. The issue of dietary caloric intake was extremely acute for nomadic peoples, especially in the run-up to harsh and prolonged winters. A diet based exclusively on the meat of forest dwellers harbored a huge hidden threat to human health. The meat of small game, such as deer, has an extremely low fat content, consisting mainly of lean protein. Regular consumption of only lean meat in large quantities leads to a serious metabolic imbalance in the human body. This condition, known as protein poisoning, can exhaust a person even when there is a visible abundance of food around. The body requires a huge amount of energy to digest pure protein, which it normally obtains from fats or carbohydrates. In the absence of these components in the diet, the liver begins to work itself to exhaustion, trying to process the excess of nitrogenous compounds. People forced to subsist solely on lean forest game experience a constant feeling of uncontrollable hunger, weakness, and a sharp drop in body temperature. In the harsh winters of the Great Plains, a lack of fat in the diet meant certain and agonizing death from starvation and hypothermia. Therefore, the search for fatty resources was not merely a matter of taste preferences, but an absolute physiological necessity. Caloric self-sufficiency gave the Lakota a huge psychological advantage over peoples teetering on the brink of survival. The knowledge that the camp had reliable supplies of high-energy food instilled confidence and peace of mind in the people. They could plan complex military campaigns and lengthy diplomatic missions without worrying about feeding their families in their absence. This confidence in the future became the foundation for the development of sophisticated mythology, art, and rich spiritual practices. Calories were transformed into culture, proving that the economic basis always determines the level of a civilization's development. The careful selection of food sources demonstrates the incredible adaptation of indigenous peoples to the harsh conditions of the North American continent. They did not merely survive, they managed their environment, choosing the most efficient ways to utilize natural resources. The shift from forest game to the giants of the plains marked the pinnacle of their evolutionary and economic development. This model ensured centuries of unchallenged dominance over vast territories until the advent of the industrial era. A deep understanding of the nutritional value of resources became their primary weapon in the struggle for prosperity. Organizing large-scale economic projects required the strictest discipline and the establishment of a complex system of internal governance. Unlike solitary forest hunters, where everyone fends for themselves, Lakota society was built on the principles of collective responsibility to ensure the success of centralized hunting expeditions. The tribe formed special oversight groups that maintained order and coordinated activities. These groups, often referred to as warrior societies, possessed unquestioned authority and the right to strictly enforce any violations of established rules. Individualism during critical harvesting periods was considered the gravest crime, capable of endangering the lives of the entire camp. Strict adherence to common rules during work ensured maximum efficiency and eliminated accidental errors. If anyone attempted to act alone for personal gain, they could derail the tribe's carefully planned operation. Punishments for such offenses were severe, up to and including the complete expulsion of the offender from the camp with no right of return. This rigid social structure was absolutely necessary to sustain the complex economic machinery of the Great Plains. Forest life, with its scattered nature, could never have given rise to such powerful institutions of executive authority. Unity of action in economic matters flowed seamlessly into unity on the military and diplomatic fronts. People accustomed to working as a single, well-coordinated mechanism during large-scale resource-gathering operations acted just as organized in battle. The coordination honed in managing massive flows of raw materials allowed leaders to easily command large detachments. This organization made the Lakota an incredibly formidable opponent, capable of executing complex tactical maneuvers across vast territories. The economy shaped military doctrine, where collective power always surpassed the scattered efforts of individuals. The system of distributing material goods also served as a powerful tool for social cohesion and the prevention of internal conflicts. Chiefs and the most prominent members of society considered it their duty to generously provide resources to those in need. The accumulation of wealth for wealth's sake was condemned. True respect was earned by those who gave their surplus for the good of the tribe. This mechanism of redistribution guaranteed social stability and prevented the emergence of an insurmountable divide between different families. A centralized economy of abundance provided the resources for this unique system of social equality to function. Large-scale collective labor became the primary venue for the socialization of youth and the formation of their worldview. Teenagers observed the coordinated work of their elders, absorbing an understanding of the importance of discipline, mutual aid, and respect for traditions. They saw how collective efforts led to the creation of vast reserves, ensuring a well-fed and secure life for the entire camp. This fostered a deep devotion to their people and a willingness to sacrifice personal interests for the common good. An upbringing in the spirit of collectivism was impossible under the conditions of the isolated life of small forest groups. Thus, the rejection of small-scale hunting was dictated not only by practical considerations, but also by a deep understanding of social processes. The Lakota chiefs and elders realized that only collective, strictly regulated labor could preserve the unity of their people. A centralized economy became the tool with which they forged one of the strongest and most organized structures on the continent. Their history is a vivid example of how the right choice of economic strategy shapes a sustainable and prosperous society. The unique landscape of the Great Plains dictated strict rules for survival and the formation of economic models. This endless sea of grass, devoid of dense forests and natural cover, required a completely different approach to logistics and camp provisioning. Here, it was impossible to hide from the biting winter winds behind a wall of trees, or find an abundance of wood for constant campfires. The open spaces demanded mobility, perfect organization, and the availability of reliable, wind-resistant portable structures. The forest-based habits of small groups were completely unsuitable in this harsh and demanding geographical zone. It was precisely the geography that made it impossible to use forest resources as the basis for long-term survival on the plains. The sparse patches of trees along riverbeds could not sustain camps of thousands, which required enormous amounts of raw materials. An attempt to tie the economy to these sparse areas would have led to the rapid depletion of the territory and an inevitable ecological disaster. The Lakota quickly realized that the true wealth of this region lay not in the sparse forests, but in the endless grasslands. They adapted their technologies to gather resources from the open plains, which allowed them to settle vast uninhabited territories. The sharp continental temperature fluctuations also influenced the choice of materials for clothing and dwellings. Summer heat gave way to freezing nights, and winter blizzards could last for weeks, burying everything around in meter-high snowdrifts. Only thick, properly tanned hides from large plains game could provide reliable thermal insulation in such extreme conditions. The use of thin forest hides would have led to mass freezing of the population during the very first serious cold snap. The Lakota's economic choice was a direct consequence of the need to adapt to the unforgiving climate of the Great Plains. Open spaces provided ideal conditions for organizing large-scale, multi-tiered warning and coordination systems. Smoke signals and the messenger system worked flawlessly in areas not blocked by dense forests or mountains. This allowed chiefs to manage vast numbers of people, directing them to the necessary areas for gathering resources or defending territories. The Lakota communication network was one of the most effective in the region, giving them an undeniable tactical advantage. Forested terrain, with its limited visibility, would have made such coordination absolutely impossible. Geography determined not only the materials, but also the scale of thinking of the peoples inhabiting this boundless territory. Seeing horizons before them, unimpeded by barriers, they learned to think in terms of vast expanses and colossal volumes of resources. Their economy became a reflection of this scope. No small goals, only large-scale projects and maximum results. The Great Plains forged the character of the Lakota, turning them into strong, far-sighted, and incredibly organized masters of their land. Their success is a triumph of the human mind, which managed to turn the harsh conditions of geography into its greatest advantage. The final chord of this complex economic symphony was the birth of a true nomadic empire that subjugated a vast continent. The abandonment of small-scale forest hunting and the transition to centralized resource management marked a point of no return in their history. The Lakota ceased to be merely a group of families struggling for survival and transformed into a powerful, structured geopolitical force. Their economic model ensured unprecedented demographic growth, allowing the population to grow steadily over many decades. The availability of reliable food supplies and warm dwellings significantly reduced infant mortality and increased adult life expectancy. Economic prosperity provided a powerful impetus for the development of complex political institutions and systems of intertribal interaction on the plains. Relying on their vast resources, Lakota leaders were able to dictate terms to their neighbors, forging advantageous diplomatic and trade alliances. They became guarantors of stability in the region, controlling the distribution of the most valuable goods, such as pemmican and tanned hides. Their influence extended for thousands of kilometers, forcing other peoples to reckon with their economic and military superiority. The nation's power was directly proportional to its ability to manage its resources effectively. History has proven that the choice between the two types of resources was not merely a gastronomic whim, but a fateful strategic decision. The deer represented a path of dispersion, weakness, and an eternal struggle against hunger in the shadow of dense forests. The plains giant embodied centralization, strength, prosperity, and dominion over the boundless expanses of the North American continent. The Lakota chose the second path, demonstrating an extraordinary ability for macroeconomic planning and the social organization of their society. This choice forever inscribed their name in history as the creators of one of the most efficient nomadic civilizations in the world. Studying their experience reveals just how deeply economic foundations influence every aspect of human society, from architecture to politics. They created a self-contained, self-sufficient system where every element served the common goal of conserving and multiplying resources. Their processing and storage technologies were ahead of their time, allowing them to manage colossal flows of raw materials in the complete absence of industry. It was a triumph of human rationality and the ability to adapt perfectly to the harshest environmental challenges. Their legacy remains an unparalleled example of how the economy shapes the character of an entire great nation. We see that the Lakota's tactics and economy were not a chaotic set of actions, but a coherent and deeply thought-out system of survival. They turned their potential weaknesses into strengths and the harsh natural conditions into a source of their absolute power. The abandonment of forest hunting became the very catalyst that launched the formation of the Great Alliance of Great Plains tribes. This story teaches us that in any historical process, victory goes to those who can think strategically and manage their resources wisely. What other aspects of the life and economy of the nomadic peoples of America do you find most fascinating and worthy of a separate, in-depth study? Please suggest topics for future videos that you'd like to see in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to our channel.